This is the Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. Episode 177, recorded October 12th, 2018. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today we are going to be talking about The Good Place, the first 3 episodes of the new season. This is going to be our new show that we discuss week to week, but we're coming in a little bit late. We did a few special episodes about Netflix shows and stuff, so we had to kind of delay it off. So we're going to be talking about the first 3 this week, and then after that will be week to week. We're also going to be doing something a little bit different now with news, and I used to have a newsletter that would go up on the site, but it took a lot of time. It got no views. So I just kind of decided, you know what, instead we're just going to kind of take the biggest news stories, the most relevant to like our community or like the kind of shows that we talk about and the kind of stuff we reference, and we're going to talk about those news stories at the head of the show. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about some shows that I've been watching outside of the other shows we normally talk about on the podcast. Just a few like interesting details to go over on some of those. And then it's on to The Good Place, and that'll wrap out our show. So let's get started with some news. So first up, the first item on our list here is Rahul Kohli, who is in iZombie. He plays the coroner that works at the police office, or the medical investigator, I guess, has been cast as the voice of Scarecrow in the Harley Quinn animated series that's coming to DC Universe. So not a lot to go over there, just a piece of information, really.
Just a piece of casting information. Cool.
Yeah.
I normally don't have opinion about it. I don't have opinions about most casting news. I just think, it mostly ends up being cool. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. Of course, DC Universe just recently debuted with Titans. I don't think either of us have gotten it. I can't speak for Will, though. Have you gotten DC Universe?
No.
Yeah, I haven't gotten it. I don't really have a lot of interest in it. I think I might end up liking end up doing one of those things where I pay for it like 1 month, like somewhere down the line, and just binge through everything I can, and then maybe do it again for season 2s of all the shows.
Yeah,
I'm not really interested in Titan. I might watch that. What I'm interested in is like Swamp Thing.
Yeah, I'm more likely to sign up for Disney. So
yeah, as a full-time thing I could see, but like I think I'm gonna relegate this to the same place I'm relegating YouTube Premium, which is like when Cobra Kai season 2 comes out, I'm gonna pay for a month of YouTube Premium, and then I'm gonna cancel. And in that time, I'll watch Cobra Kai, and I'll catch up on whatever other shows that look somewhat interesting coming to that service. That's kind of where I'm relegating it. I'll pay for like a month and binge. I think I might do the same thing with DC Universe, but I'm not going to do it, I don't think, until Swamp Thing comes out. That's the one that I'm more interested in.
Right.
And then I might binge through, check out Titans, but not, I don't seem that interested in it, so I might just like watch the first episode. I don't know. Not that excited about that. The Disney streaming service is more along the lines of something that I might just all out subscribe to, like in the same way I do to Hulu and Netflix,
They're gonna have like big budget Marvel and Star Wars shows, so they got me there. I'm sorry.
That's not going to be a month-to-month thing. That's going to be like a whole other thing.
Yeah, like The Mandalorian is looking like a must-see TV. So yeah.
Now this is what's interesting now is that we're reaching this point now with, like I said, I've heard other people talk about the same strategy I'm talking about, which is that you have certain streaming services that you just pay for all the time. Right now for me, those are Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon. Those are the big ones. I just pay for those year round
because they cover like basically all the bases for me, at least.
Yeah, and then other streaming services, it's like, man, there's too many streaming services. But the idea is that you don't just subscribe to all of them. You just do it every so often. Like you're like, okay, I have a free month. There's been quite amount of good stuff on YouTube Premium, so I'm just going to pay for 1 month and binge and then cancel, and then a year later when there's new seasons of all that stuff, I'll do it again. And that's kind of like how I think I'm going to be treating DC Universe, and it's how I'm going to be treating CBS All Access, because I still want to watch Star Trek Discovery, and I want to see some of those short Trek things, and I want to see that Jean-Luc Picard show, but I'm not going to pay for that streaming service just for a bunch of Star Trek. That's just not going to do it for me, you know? But paying for it like 1 month every year, yeah, that's fine. I could do that and then just binge. But yeah, it's just interesting that that's like the strategy we have coming. But Disney's going to be like a whole other thing. That's going to be like Netflix level, I think. So that's not something I'm going to do like 1 month a year, but that I'll just keep a subscription open for. But that's kind of all that's really interesting about that story, I guess. Next up, another superhero show that I don't think either of us watched, which is Gotham. And the only thing kind of interesting about this is just that it's a big character that's been cast. They're going to have Bane in this new season of Gotham, as if they don't have enough villains in Gotham.
I'm still waiting for them to, I'm still waiting for Ketchup King, or Condiment King to show up.
That show is just nothing but villains, right? You know?
Yeah.
Apparently they're going to do, I think it's either the season or series finale, they're going to do like a 10-year time skip or something and just go to like full on straight up real Batman or something at the end. Like that's how they're going to epilogue the season.
They're going to pull a Smallville, like, right? But this time he'll be in the costume.
Yeah. So that could be interesting. That might be worth checking out, just like the last episode or something. But yeah, the role of Bane was cast, and it's going to be played by Shane West. He was in Nikita. He was also in that, what was that WGN show about witches?
Oh, Salem?
Yeah, he was in Salem as well. So he's going to be playing Bane. What's slightly interesting here is that if you remember when Tom Hardy was cast as Bane, he was cast just because he's a fantastic actor and he's really intimidating, but he's kind of a short guy. Like,
he's
Bane's,
yeah. Bane's like a big dude.
Yeah. So it was kind of weird, but like that kind of like broke a mold for that character. Like him doing that kind of like changed things. And so now Shane West being in Gotham, Shane West is another guy. He's kind of a short guy, you know? So it's kind of weird that like, because you have somebody that's just such a big force like Tom Hardy come on and play this like huge character, and then he's not a big guy, and that can kind of like change your perception of the character. And like, I think when most people now think about Bane, they don't think about the Bane from the comics or the animated series or anything. They think about Tom Hardy.
Right.
They think about him and his weird voice going like, "Well, hello. Hi, Batman. I am Bane. You have my permission to die." You know?
Yeah. Tom Hardy, like also, like, it was muffled. I just thought that's an odd choice for like Bane, like.
But that's the archetype now for that character.
Yeah, that's the archetype now for that character. Forget everything that came before. Forget like Batman the animated series.
Yeah, he's just fundamentally changed that character and our perception of him. So, yeah, Shane West is gonna kind of seems like he's gonna be more in the mold of the Tom Hardy Bane. He's kind of an intense actor. He's got those intense eyes, you know. And
too bad Heath Ledger's Joker didn't become the archetype for that character, because
they just don't know what to do with that character. There's like a million of them now.
Yeah, there's a million. Like Jared Leto is like, that is so far off the mark. Holy cow!
The Joaquin Phoenix one looks pretty interesting, but it's like the whole Elseworlds thing.
Yeah, it's the whole Elseworlds thing, exactly.
But yeah, anyways, Shane West playing Bane. He's a good actor, just not what you'd normally expect from Bane, but nowadays, after, The Dark Knight Rises, it's, I think, actually what people maybe are expecting from Bane. So that'll be interesting to see. Next piece of news up, another casting story. Simon Pegg, who I just don't really think needs much introduction. He's, if you're into genre stuff, you should know who Simon Pegg is.
Oh, I don't know. Who is that guy?
He's joining Amazon's adaptation of The Boys, which is a Garth Ennis comic. Garth Ennis, of course, did Preacher. The Boys is kind of like an anti-superhero series. Is that a group? Don't they like kill superheroes or something?
Yeah, they do.
It's basically the idea is that superheroes have gotten so out of their, heads with egos that they're just like, in their personal lives, they're just like horrific people.
Yeah,
and they cause chaos.
Are out of control, and the Boys is an organization that keeps them in line, right?
Yeah, kills some of the ones that get out of hand and stuff. So Simon Pegg.
And the whole like series is just taking the piss, because they present these superheroes as most ridiculous, like egotistical, selfish, like archetypes. And it's Garth Ennis, so there's a healthy dose of violence and just crude humor and stuff like that.
Yeah, so this is going to be exciting. This is going to be a new series on Amazon, and
Simon Pegg doesn't surprise me, because like the one guy in the comics literally looks like Simon Pegg, like exactly. So
that'll be interesting. Carl Urban's also in the series. He's one of like the main characters in it. So they released a first teaser for it at New York Comic Con. I don't think he was even in that teaser, but it was just, he ended up making a surprise appearance at New York Comic Con, and that's where they announced that he had joined the cast. So that's our third story. Onto our fourth story, which is the Dresden Files, which is a fantasy novel series about a kind of like a modern wizard, like it takes place in modern times, has been picked up by Fox 21, who of course will do, FX shows.
There was already a series.
Yes.
On this. It ran on the Sci-Fi Channel, if I remember, and it starred
Paul Blackthorne.
Yeah, the detective from Arrow.
Yeah. Laurel's father from Arrow. The drunken detective. That's Paul Blackthorne, and that was the first time I'd seen that actor was in the Dresden Files.
Was in the Dresden Files. Okay, I had actually seen that show, but I was aware of it.
It's on the cheese. That was in the days when fantasy shows were like really low budget and kind of played more on cheese and stuff.
Right. Well, especially on the Sci-Fi Channel. That was Sci-Fi Channel like traded in like cheese for a long time.
Yeah, it wasn't like Sharknado or something. It wasn't like intentionally bad. It was just kind of cheesier,
It was trying to be good, but I think it was just low budget.
Very, very low budget. Yeah. And you could tell. That's kind of. But yeah, that was Dresden Files. That's coming, or optioned by Fox 21. Like I said, that's Fox 21 is they handle development of shows largely for like FX. So like Sons of Anarchy is Fox 21, for example. Stuff like that. So, they tend to do kind of edgier content. So that'll be interesting to see kind of an edgier Dresden Files. Because we don't really have like a modern fantasy series. We have a shit ton of epic, medieval fantasy series coming in the next like couple years. There's like a ton between Lord of the Rings and the Game of Thrones spin-off series, Game of Thrones, which we have the last season coming next year, The Witcher. There's just a ton of shows. A few that were just, picked up officially the last couple weeks ago. So just a bunch. But none of them are like modern fantasies, really. I think like the closest maybe is like American Gods, and that's like not really like fantasy in the same vein. It's like about gods. So there's it's kind of an unexplored niche right now. It's something that they can kind of plant their flag in. And that brings us to our last story, which is the sad cancellation of Marvel's Iron Fist on Netflix. This is sad mostly because if you listen to our podcast 2 weeks ago, or no, it was last week's podcast, right? We were talking about Iron Fist?
Last week's podcast was all about Iron Fist Season 2.
Yes.
Yes.
One of the main things that we talked about on that show is that Season 2 was better than Season 1, still wasn't great, but all of us were excited about the prospects of where the series could go from the way Season 2 ended, the epilogue it had. That was what excited all three of us that were talking about the show.
Right.
And now that's it. Been kind of snubbed out. That's, no more Season 3, at least on Netflix. There's some conspiracy theories based on the way things were worded.
So Marvel, the official Iron Fist account on Twitter posted an image of Iron Fist, the Netflix Iron Fist, with the word immortal, and the headline saying the story is never over, and with a link to the latest Iron Fist comic books on Marvel.com. Mm-hmm. Okay, I thought that was
Iron Fist is still going on in the comic books. There's a chance, I think it's pretty slim. Will and I talked about just before the podcast that there's a chance that this could come to Disney's streaming service, that this could be like the first series of those Netflix ones to move over. But I don't really think that that's that likely because they're going much higher end with their series, and they've already announced that they're going to be doing like mini series about Loki and Scarlet Witch with the actors who play them in the movies. And they didn't say that they were just doing those two. They said a number of series, which makes you think like, well, why is Disney streaming service going to be bothering with like Netflix's leftovers basically when they have like really high budget, major, directly connected to the actual MCU stuff that they can put on their service. Like, I don't think they're too concerned about the Netflix shows right now. So yeah, I mean, I guess we're not going to get that. The other thing that could happen, I guess, is that the character could continue without the series. He could pop up in other shows like Luke Cage or something like that. He already popped up in one episode of season 2 of Luke Cage. What I expressed to Will before we started the podcast is that I kind of wish they'd cancel Luke Cage as well and then just do Heroes for Hire instead.
Right.
But who knows? As for now, Iron Fist is canceled at Netflix just as it got good in the last 2 minutes of its season.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it for the news. Next up, we're gonna go over some shows that have come up in the last couple weeks or so and that we don't normally talk about on the podcast as much. So first off, I want to talk about Big Mouth. I watched the entirety of season 2. For anybody who doesn't know, Big Mouth is it's an animated show. If you compared it to other kind of animated shows, it's probably closest to something like Bob's Burgers as far as the kind of style of the show. But the difference about this and a lot of other animated shows like that is that Big Mouth has a direction. It's about puberty, so it's got a progressing story as these kids are going through puberty. And it's just a really fascinating take on an embarrassing thing that we've all been through, It's a horrific time in everybody's life, and it's kind of being depicted in a real kind of fantastical way with versions of there's a hormone monster that is a guardian spirit for each kid, that is basically encouraging them to fuck everything in sight, fuck that pillow, and trying to encourage them. There's a shame wizard who's, I think, one of the best additions to season 2 because he's played by David Thewlis, who is Professor Lupin in the Harry Potter movies. And he goes around exploiting kids' shames and making them feel terrible about the things in their life.
Right.
And so it's just a really kind of interesting take on the idea of what puberty does to people and the kind of experience you go through with that. So yeah, it's a really good show. Season 2 continues to be really good, really funny. So check that out. It's on Netflix. Doctor Who recently returned, and this is the first female Doctor. So the character of the Doctor in Doctor Who regenerates every so often. The character will basically be dying and then regenerates as a completely new character. That it's the Doctor, so it has these overarching traits of the Doctor. But then it's not just the physical appearance that changes, but there's aspects of the personality that are different. So the last one was Peter Capaldi ended up playing the Doctor. He was the last one we had, and he kind of was an older guy, but kind of sprightly. But they made him kind of grumpy and dark in that kind of way as somebody who's older and maybe a little bit more pessimistic. You had Matt Smith before him, who was one of the youngest Doctors, and he was really childlike and really kind of in awe of everything. And so you've had all these different people playing Doctor, giving their different takes on it. So this season, it's Jodie Whittaker, who is in Broadchurch, and she's the first female Doctor, which of course is going to be divisive because there's going to be people that just hate the idea that, why did you turn this into a female character? But it's he's a character that regenerates and changes, so it's not really a big deal. He can turn into any race or gender, they could even make him non-human looking, that would be fine too. But I just wanted to say I've seen the first episode of the new season of Doctor Who. It's more Doctor Who. I'm actually kind of on the verge of leaving Doctor Who and not continuing to watch it, but that has nothing to do with Jodie Whittaker. It's just the fact that TV is changing so much right now, and it's expanding so rapidly into every tiny niche that can serve the people that want to watch those. And you have to start giving up shows because there's just so much good stuff on now. You physically cannot watch everything. It's impossible. There's less hours in the day than there is original content now.
Hell, there's less hours in a life. Like, pretty soon there's going to be less hours in a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, Netflix has, I think, like 600 originals right now or something. That's just Netflix, you know? And that's just not shows that are on Netflix. That's just their original. Just to give you an idea. There's just so much. And the good thing about that is that you can just kind of like hyper tune into your niche. Like, it's not just like, oh, I like fantasy and this is a fantasy show, so I'll watch this. It's like, oh, I like fantasy where the main character is British, but it takes place in Norway. And it's like, you can like hyper specifically go into like every aspect that you want, and you can pretty much find a show that matches that now. And because of that, you know, for me, Doctor Who was something that I liked, but it was never my favorite, you know? It was never like one of my favorite shows. It was always something that I just enjoyed. And because of that, I just don't know if I'm going to continue watching it because I have so many other things that I like more than Doctor Who. And that's not to say that Doctor Who's gotten worse or something. It's the same. That's like the thing that I noticed from watching this episode is before the episode came out, I was seeing reviews saying like Doctor Who is back and better than ever. And then other people saying Doctor Who's been ruined forever. And to me, I watched it. It's Doctor Who. It's just more the same. This is exactly what I would have expected from Doctor Who. So if you're a huge fan of Doctor Who, it's exactly the same. You're going to be a huge fan of this too. If you're kind of on the fence about it and you're waiting for Doctor Who to do something radically different and that's why you'd like it, well, besides the fact that it's a female doctor, there's really nothing radically different here. And if you're like me and you like Doctor Who, but you know, it's been a while since it's been on and so much other stuff has come up, there's really nothing that's changed enough to make it grab you even more than it did before. So that's kind of my take on Doctor Who. I'm actually thinking about writing an article about it just because I've seen so many differing opinions on it and I haven't seen anybody kind of talk about what's really going on with the show, what's going right down the middle, the fact that it's just the same and it's more the times that are changing than the show. And lastly, South Park has been back for 3 episodes now, and they've been doing something interesting where they started this ad campaign before the show started that was basically talking about, like, with sad music playing and saying, like, you know, times change, things need to change with them or something. And that says, #cancel South Park. This was South Park's ad for the show, was a hashtag to cancel it. And then every episode has ended. As the credits run, it has the hashtag cancel South Park imposed over the credits of every episode. So there's kind of like a lot of like theories going around, people going like, are like Matt and Trey just really sick of doing South Park and they're asking somebody else to cancel it for them? And I'm like, what's going on, you know, with that? Or is this some kind of a joke that's going to pay off later? Is this just like a general joke? Just the idea of like, you know, the hashtag kind of stuff that goes on now, the movements, and they're just kind of riffing on that. But one thing that they've done that's interesting that you can see a perspective of in these new episodes is that it's continuing on with the modern direction of South Park. You have PC principle, PC culture as a big part of the storytelling process. But it's been, these last 3 episodes have all been kind of like throwbacks to like things that have either happened in the show before or kind of like older ideas. Like the first episode of the season was about school shootings. And they've covered school shootings on the show before, and South Park usually doesn't repeat themselves. So it's a little bit weird, but they're doing it kind of in a different angle, which is that the whole point of the first episode is that school shootings are so frequent that everybody's numb to them. Like, so there's literally like a bunch of school shootings that happen at the South Park Elementary with like kids dying and stuff. None of the characters that you know, but like you'll see kids being pulled away on stretchers with blankets over their face and dead, you know? And the idea is just that things have gotten so, like, it just happens so often now that like nobody cares anymore. Like, it's just like, oh, another school shooting. It's just like any other aspect of life or something, which is kind of like, that's the parody they're they're making with it. And then they did their second episode, and it was about Catholic priests molesting boys, which is like, not only is it not really a timely issue, but it's something that South Park covered before, like way long ago, like many seasons back. And they're directly referencing aspects of that episode through that episode. And then this last episode, they basically had Mr. Hanky getting kicked out of town because he was tweeting while on Ambien, like a la Roseanne Barr. And the idea there being that Mr. Hanky was this like beloved character on the show that we haven't seen in ages on the show. And they're like now showing like how he doesn't have a place in, I guess, in 2018 culture, I guess. And so it's almost like they're basically like finding like hot topic issues or like hotly debated issues, things that are divisive, and they're exploiting those each week and then blasting the credits with cancel South Park at the end to try to see how people react to it. And the one place that's bit on that has been the Catholic League that bit on the second episode and started like posting all this stuff about how they're hypocrites and they're horrible and blah, 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 and all this other stuff about Matt Stone and Trey Parker. But yeah, that's kind of just like an interesting thing that South Park's doing. And it's not even so much in the episodes themselves as it is like the messaging around the episodes.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen something like that before. It's like a meta story. It's weird.
It's next level. It's
next
level South Park.
Pretty much. I mean,
where do you go? Like South Park has been on for since the mid 90s.
Yeah, it's been on for more than 20 years. So
it's crazy to think because I still remember when that show was like brand new, and I kind of like it was premiering on Comedy Central. I kind of scoffed at the time, and I was like, "This isn't gonna last."
This isn't gonna go more than a season.
It just looked, I don't know, it looked silly to me, and I don't know, but apparently, yeah, it was hugely successful. It was a lot better than I gave it credit for at first blush.
Yeah. And it's just interesting what they're doing now, so we'll have to kind of see how that continues. If they're actually trying to get rid of their own show now. I mean, after 20-something years, that could very well be the case. They might just be sick of doing the show. And and that might actually be the best thing to happen to the show. I mean, these last 3 episodes have just been kind of okay. None of them have been like some of the better episodes of South Park. But if they want to be canceled, then that kind of gives them like a license to really go out there and be like as offensive as possible.
Right.
And that could be interesting. So we'll have to see where this is going. If this ends up being like a thing that's addressed as the season continues, or if it's just this kind of meta story that's going on in the ads for the show and in the end credits with the hashtag, So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But that brings us to The Good Place, which is our main topic of the show that we're going to be talking about. The first 3 episodes have come out. First episode titled Everything is Bonzer. It was an hour-long episode. Second episode was called The Brainy Bunch. And the third episode, The Snowplow. And so we're not going to talk about them like episode to episode. I don't even know if we're going to necessarily talk about all the specific events that happen in it. We're just going to kind of take it loosely and talk about what we think about it. So I'm going to ask you first off, Will, what are you thinking of season 3 so far?
You know what? I mean, 3 episodes is a lot to go on, but I'm enjoying it. I saw some comments like say people aren't enjoying it as much as previous seasons because it's on Earth or something.
Yeah.
Oh, but I don't know. But it's like, I don't know. It's not a lot to go off and say, oh, this is bad, because it's an interesting setup.
Yeah, what's really interesting is where they're going to go with it now, because they quickly broke, part of that format within these 3 episodes where they had, it basically came out that Michael had to kind of like try to influence it beyond what he said he would to the judge when they set this whole thing up on Earth, and he started influencing it more. Through all his influencing, the demons got their eyes on it, and they sent Trevor in there to do the same thing, to try to influence it in the negative direction. And so it's kind of like you have like the angels on the shoulders there in that sense. But then the judge found out about everything and was like pissed off. Like, okay, we're canceling this whole thing. We're sending you back to hell and that's it, Michael and Janet ended up escaping and heading back to Earth, where, like, in this last episode, they just went hog wild. Like, they just went completely reckless. Like, trying to kind of influence them. It was actually kind of funny because, like, at first it was like, oh, you know, like, we'll give Eleanor a lottery ticket so she doesn't move, away because she's out of money. And so it's like, oh, wow, I found this lottery ticket with $18,000. Isn't that amazing? And then it was like, oh, okay, well, let's do a few other smaller things. And so other smaller things started happening. And then they set up Tahani with Larry Hemsworth, which was a really kind of funny joke that they had going throughout it. The whole idea that he's like this, the ugly child of the Hemsworth family. But he's not ugly at all. He's it's a perfectly attractive, like, leading man type, but, like, he's like got this huge inferiority complex because he'd be the brother of, like, Luke and Chris Hemsworth, who are, like, huge mega movie stars that are, have huge female fandom. But it's interesting, that they set him up with Tahani, who has sibling issues as well. With her sister.
Yeah, Tahani has sister issues. Chidi has his indecisiveness, which gets fixed and then gets immediately broken again in, like, the first episode.
Yeah.
Because, and yeah, we have, and we have Jason, who's just stupid. He's just a major idiot, so.
Yeah, I think the idea with Jason is that he's like willfully ignorant. Like, he doesn't even try to kind of be better. No. Like, they kind of like, those are kind of like the sins that they lay on them. Eleanor's like aggressively negative.
Yeah, well, Eleanor
is indecisive.
Yeah, Eleanor is aggressively selfish. Chidi is indecisive.
Tahini is got a big sister complex, but as part of that, she's vain. Yeah.
Yeah, she's extremely vain. She's always, name dropping celebrities and stuff, and she's obsessed with her status.
And Jason's just willfully ignorant.
And Tahini's jealousy of her sister comes from the fact that her sister is actually more popular, has higher status than her in her view. Her sister's more popular with her parents. She's like this major, like, celebrity, and Tahini isn't. So that's where her jealousy of her sister comes from. It's born out of her own vanity.
And like, Eleanor's comes from her upbringing with being raised by kind of a selfish mother and not having that kind of base in her life. And,
it's interesting. I don't think they really explain what the cause of, Chidi's indecisiveness is. Like, they haven't.
No,
really
I don't think so. Or Jason.
Yeah, well, why is Jason stupid?
Well, it's not, well, like I said, it's not, I don't think it's so much that Jason's stupid, it's, his sin isn't just stupidity, it's like willful ignorance.
Yeah, willful ignorance, yeah.
If he wanted to, he could try to be a better person, and he doesn't, he just kind of, he revels in his stupidity. I think that's the thing that is his sin, I guess, in the series. But yeah, so it's been kind of interesting seeing this different perspective on them, like on Earth, if their life continued and how their group got back together and the kind of challenges that have come up in place of that. Adam Scott returned as Trevor. We had last seen him, I think, in season 1, wasn't it? Where he was our first glimpse of the bad place before we knew that the good place was the bad place.
Yeah, it was a
smug, like horrible person.
He came over for part of the ruse, that part of the ruse to keep up that the good place was the good place and the bad place was the bad place because Eleanor had gotten herself into a situation where she was going to have to be sent to the bad place when she was already there. So that's where Trevor first came in, and I was so happy to see him again because Adam Scott is just awesome, and he was awesome in this too. But,
yeah, well, this is like a totally different version of him because in season 1,
playing a role in this, right?
Because
what happens is, right, the demons are trying to hack into Judge's system to find out where the group went, because they're trying to find them and bring them back to the bad place. So they hacked into Judge's system, and because of a mistake that Michael makes, they get through and they find out. And so that's when they send Trevor to Earth to infiltrate the group and kind of ruin Michael's, what Michael's doing. So
but in a very different way than the way he acted in the first season, where in the first season he was like this like upfront, like kind of bad guy that just kind of came up. He was slick, but he was like,
well, again, he's playing a role because he's trying to infiltrate this group. So he takes on this persona, of being like,
he's still the worst, but he's like the worst with the best intentions.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's this overly like nice guy, right?
It just causes nothing but crap in his way.
Yeah, it causes nothing but crap. And then Michael's got to figure out a way to like stop him or get rid of him.
Yeah, there's lots of funny stuff kind of connected to that. I mean, there's the part where Trevor came back at Michael with the burn about looking like Dick Tracy, and then Michael just kept trying to like come up with a follow up, and they were just horrible and like late, and it just got completely fixated on it. And Trevor was like already gone by the time he'd found his response, which still wasn't great. And but what did you think about? I think one of the funniest things to do with kind of like the bad place. It was like Sean, who is kind of like the head demon.
Yes.
Cocooning everyone.
Cocooning everyone. Yeah.
Like somebody would annoy him and he'd cocoon them, and then somebody else would like go out of their way not to anny him, and then he'd cocoon them for doing that.
And he said, "Why'd you do that?" And he says, I find it to be fun."
There's the one shot where you go back into the boardroom and like they're trying to like find everybody, and you just see all the other seats in the boardroom and everyone's cocooned.
Yeah, everyone's cocooned. He's like, "I'm a demon. What do you expect?"
He's a great character.
Yeah, Sean is awesome. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't see him like outside of like that one part where like he's concluding everybody. But I hope we see him more this season.
Another plot point we should bring up from these early episodes is that now that Chidi's back on Earth, we find out that there's this girl that he's kind of had a crush on that works in like the neurology department of the school that Chidi teaches at. Basically, is a professor at. She's like kind of like the head of their neurology department or something, and he goes to her to kind of like check his own brain, but also later on to check like Eleanor's brain and everybody else's brains in conjunction with his lessons on ethics to see if anything shows up in like brain scans in relation to like the topics they're going over about ethics. It's like this big experiment. And he clearly has a crush on her. She's clearly putting out vibes to like point out that she's interested in him, and he's just not noticing them at all. Which is funny. It's partly because of his indecisiveness. He can never like get up the willpower to actually do anything about it. And then Eleanor is able to kind of like push him into like, admitting something to her, to like asking her out basically. So that was like another interesting little.
Yeah, that was another. Well, yeah. Well, we get like in episode 3, we get Michael. Well, because we see it. I shouldn't say because it's a progression, right? Because Michael over the course of the experiment gets himself more and more involved with steering it in the direction he feels it should be going, and we find increasingly he can't take his hands off the wheel, right? So like every little thing makes him nervous or jittery. And he like compels him to intervene constantly.
The point where they have like he tries to get him faster computers, and they end up with this like insane like smart display like in the room.
Yeah, like freaking future tech, within like a year's time. Yeah, he's like, faster computers. Yeah, he starts doing this thing he calls snow plowing, which is he's like, I'm just making a smooth ride. I'm clearing the way. Like, Eleanor mentions that she's run out of money and she has to get a job. And like, Michael's like, if she gets a job, she won't have time for the study group. This is awful. I need to do something. And so, because Janet knows which, what lottery tickets are the winning ones, he buys a winning lottery ticket, and Eleanor suddenly gets like $18,000. Which Tahani like replies, "I'm sorry, better luck next time." And
that was funny because like everyone's cheering and then simultaneously she's like, "Oh, so sorry."
yeah, oh, so sorry. Better luck next time. And she's like, oh, judging from everyone else's reaction, that's actually a large amount of money.
What about her talking about how she has a place that she got on Airbnb?
Yeah.
And they're all like, they get there and it's this massive mansion, and she's like,
you
no.
got a mansion on Airbnb, and she's like, no, Airbnb.
H-E-I-R.
Yeah. It's for heirs and heiresses. We trade stuff like mansions and stuff back and forth.
Which is just funny. That's all at the party where they're announcing her engagement to Larry Hemsworth.
Yeah, to Larry Hemsworth. That's again Michael's meddling, because Larry Hemsworth because Tahani is gonna go sleep with Jason, and this freaks Michael out. He's like, thinks that, if that happens, bad things are gonna happen so he sets it up so that she runs into Larry Hemsworth and they get together,
And they also, to cover on Jason's side, they basically just end up hooking up with a group because she was going to go visit him on the guise of going to watch a football game with them. And, so they set it up that he ends up finding like a group of like cute mega fans of the same team as him. So he doesn't even notice that she didn't show up because he got completely working on something else.
Right.
But yeah, so there's just like all sorts of like little things going on. I think one of my favorite scenes, and I end up using it for the cover image for the podcast, is when they got back when they were talking to the judge and the judge was like scolding them. And they had the moment where everything that Janet had wished for while she was on Earth, because her powers don't work when she's on Earth. Like she retains the memory, so she knows what's the winning lottery ticket and stuff. But she only knows that because those tickets were printed while she was, still in the good place and had a connection to all that information. So her actual powers don't work though when she's like on Earth. So she's been all these times she's been like, oh, I could go for some ice cream right now, or like, what if we just had a tractor here, or what, like all these like little things like all over the place that she's like thought of. And then the second she gets back into onto the bridge on the way to the afterlife and everything with the judge, like everything she's wished for has cached like it would on like a printer. That's the example she uses, that like if a printer crashes, when it finally comes back online, it starts printing everything out that was like queued up. And so basically like everything that she wished for queues up just starts like popping into existence. And that's how they end up getting away from the judge. They end up using that as a distraction to get away, as it's like a tanks, ice cream parlors, like whole parlors, like a big billboard that says Trevor sucks.
Yeah.
All this stuff just kind of like appears on the gateway between there. And then while the judge is distracted dealing with that, the doorman to Earth, who Michael had treated before, like in the first episode, to picking him up like a coffee mug with like a frog on it because he loves frogs, apparently.
Yeah, the doorman loves frogs. So he's been bribing the doorman to get through. Finally, what happens is the judge finds out what he's doing. She summons Michael, Janet, and Trevor, and they go out there, and she's scolding Michael and Janet, and then Trevor tries to get on her side, and she just like whoosh, like exiles him, like just into oblivion. Who knows where the hell he went? Like, that was pretty funny. That was the end of Trevor. Which I like in like the beginning of the third episode. Like, this leads to Chidi reading a text from Trevor, which was like, I regret to inform you I had to quit the study program because I am stupid and ugly. And
then it cuts to Michael's like, I wrote that.
Yeah.
So there's just lots of stuff. I mean, I think we took this a little bit too loose with the way we directed this conversation with the show.
We'll be more structured when we get to a one episode per week like format.
So let's just kind of cap it off. We'll talk about the way it ended. So the way this episode ended was that Michael and Janet were kind of having an argument about what their next step should be. And they finally decide they're going to pop into the afterlife for just a little bit with using the doorman's key to kind of get what they need to move forward with their next plan. And as they're doing that and they open up the door, they don't realize that the entire group is like gathered there. And they're like, what the hell is that? Seeing like this portal to the afterlife. And that's kind of the point we leave on now, is that like everyone's kind of now aware that there's something up with, you know, they've all encountered Michael in different guises, as like an Australian library guy, as a bartender, as like, you know, all these different things. And now here's this guy that they've all encountered in the same place, standing in front of a magical portal. And they're all aware. So I think this basically means that we're in for like a big twist. Not like a plot twist that surprises us, but a big twist in direction, or a big shift in direction for like where the show's moving forward now. And that's kind of what happened in season 2, when it had started, in the first couple episodes were about Michael like trying desperately to keep resetting his version of the bad place, because they kept finding out they were in the bad place, and he kept having to reset it over and over again. And then eventually he was kind of broken by that and decided that, you know, all the demons were turning against him, and in order to kind of survive, he ended up making a pact with the group, started learning ethics himself, and that's kind of the direction that season 2 took. Like, where it initially looked like it was going to be all about Michael now as the bad guy trying to do that, it became about Michael becoming a good guy, basically, like a demon learning ethics. And now I think we're at that same kind of twist point, or shift for season 3, where like I think that what we kind of fundamentally know the third season to be is going to change in the next couple episodes.
Right, exactly. Because the interesting thing on the end is like they catch Michael opening the door, because Michael, again, he can't stop meddling. He comes up with this insane like plan where he's just gonna reset the timeline and continue meddling until things go his way. Which, by the way, we saw him do this before when he was constantly resetting the timeline in the bad place, good place.
Yeah, the beginning of season 2.
Yep. And trying to make his experiment work the way he wanted to, and it didn't. So he
wants to do it to Earth now, and his idea is basically, I'm going to unplug it and plug it back in again.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to reset the timeline on Earth, but he's like, I'm going to But he's proposing doing the exact same thing, and it didn't work the first time. So, but I think everybody catching him with the door at the end kind of changes those plans. And
yeah, we're in for a shift now for what?
Yeah, we're in for a shift.
It's going to be.
For what I understand, the next episode is going to be interesting.
Yeah, so that's it. That's where we leave off. We're going to be back. We're going to be talking about the show week to week, as I mentioned. A little bit more structured from now on, I think. It's hard to kind of do it when we're catching up on like 3 episodes. It's not a whole season, so we can't talk about the entire arcs and stuff, but it's also not a single episode, so we can't just break down the events and go over that, you know. But we're gonna start kind of like handling it a little bit differently.
Yeah,
as we go week to week.
As we go week to week. Because it's not gonna be like a lot to talk about. These are like 30-minute episodes, you know.
So, now that that's over, here's what's coming up in the week ahead. Today, Friday, October 12th, 2018, Blind Spot returned on NBC, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend returned on the CW, Dynasty returned on the CW, Light as a Feather debuted on Hulu, The Romanovs debuted on Amazon, The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, and Titans premiered on DC Universe. On Sunday, October 14th, 2018, Charmed returns, with its new iteration. It's a remake on the CW, as well as Supergirl returning on the CW. Camping debuts on HBO. This is a new series starring Jennifer Garner that's produced by what's her name, the creator of Girls, Dunham.
Oh, okay. I heard that was a bad show.
Yeah,
it got bad reviews.
Yeah, it's not getting great reviews right now. So it's Harvey Bardman, Attorney General, is a new animated special. It's going to be airing on Adult Swim, and just really
nice
network. That's on Sunday, as I said. Monday, October 15th, 2018, Arrow returns on the CW, and they're putting a special Constantine: The Legend Continues on the CW as well, which is, I believe they're doing like an animated series, like a short series on CW Seed or something, and then they're doing some special where I don't know if they've combined the episodes or something, but there's some kind of Constantine special on the CW on Monday. Tuesday, October 16th, Blackish returns on ABC. The Connors, which is Roseanne without Roseanne, that's on ABC. The Kids Are Alright on ABC. The Rookie is a new drama series, comes to ABC. That's with Nathan Fillion, playing like a rookie police officer who's, he's older, but he's a rookie. Splitting Up Together also returns on ABC, so that's ABC night, I guess. And Louder Milk debuts on the Audience Network, if you have DirecTV or AT&T. Then on Friday, October 19th, 2018, next week, Lore returns for its second season on Amazon. Wild District, a new foreign action series, debuts on Netflix. Wanderlust debuts on Netflix. And the long-anticipated Season 3 of Marvel's Daredevil debuts on Netflix.
Yes.
So that's what's coming up in the week ahead. Next week, we're going to continue our discussion of Season 3 of The Good Place. And we'll also talk about the news stories, which is kind of our new thing to kick off our shows with.
News stories. I love talking about news stories. So, yeah, I'm glad we transitioned this to the podcast.
Yeah, it just works better than having to type up all the information again. So,
right.
this will work better as a way of putting it out there. But until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best